to this now. South Africa's political elites are partly to blame for the Zimbabwean migrant crisis that the country is now dealing with. This is according to Zimbabwean investigative journalist Hopewell Chin'ono. He says the South African government's quiet diplomacy during the Mbeki era, and in fact a number of eras in this country, and the current administration and its silence, all those have led to a deepening of the economic crisis in that country. Chin'ono joins me now via Skype, in fact, down the line to talk to me about his views. And Hopewell, I don't want to misconstrue what you wrote. I read your input in detail. In essence, you were saying, if I understood you correctly, what South Africa is doing at the border, flying choppers and having speedboats on the Limpopo River, is a plaster. We're not dealing with the real problem, and the real problem, in part, is not only in north of the Limpopo, but south of the Limpopo as well.
That is correct, Sure. The problem that we have in Zimbabwe is a political problem that is manifesting itself through economics, which is the collapse of the Zimbabwean economy. And as such, it's normal human instinct for people to look for better, greener pastures. And what Zimbabweans are doing is what everyone would have done if they were in their shoes. They are crossing over to South Africa because South Africa is the only viable economy which can provide jobs to people who are coming not just from Zimbabwe but from other countries. And our problem has been exacerbated over the years because, as you know, you covered Zimbabwe for years. The main problem is that South Africa has been supporting Zimbabwe each time the Zimbabwean crisis issue comes up at SADC or at the African Union. South Africa is the key point in the region for trying to resolve the issues. And whenever they have been given that role, they have supported the ZANU-PF government. And by so doing, they are exacerbating the crisis. Is getting worse because ZANU-PF government feels that it has support from the biggest economy in the region, and it has support from the ANC. So that's why I was saying that the South African government is partly to blame because South African citizens are rightly asking why jobs are going to foreigners. But the South African government is not addressing the issue. It's flying in choppers to Beitbridge to try and stop people from crossing the Limpopo River into South Africa. But it's actually not working, as I said in that Facebook article, because if you have seen yesterday and today, there are a lot of videos on social media of Zimbabweans still crossing and still not being caught by those choppers, which the South African government has deployed.
So I want to bring up a quote from, that post that you put up, Hopewell, and particularly where you talk about the role of people such as President Cyril Ramaphosa and the government here in South Africa. So I'll just call that up and read it out to lay the context for us going forward. The president, you say President Ramaphosa stands in solidarity with President Mnangagwa's regime, which authors unemployment and has destroyed the job opportunities that Zimbabweans seek in your country, meaning South Africa. It is a political problem that will remain in place until it is solved, and when your own political elites in the ANC stop supporting the political rot in Harare. And basically you say, let's talk in 6 months, Zimbabweans will continue to cross into South Africa legitimately or illegally. What does standing in solidarity with the administration, the Mnangagwa administration in Harare look like, Hopewell? There was a sense last year in August that it seemed, South Africa was finally trying to make some moves. Envoys were appointed, and we saw the ANC saying that they would send their own team into Zimbabwe. But it seems that has fizzled out.
So standing in solidarity or shoulder to shoulder with ZANU-PF, it's a historical phenomenon between the ANC and ZANU-PF. I'll just give a good example, which all of us will still remember, including your viewers. In 2008, ZANU-PF and Robert Mugabe lost an election to the opposition movement for democratic change. There was a crisis. Hundreds of people were killed. Hands were being hacked and it was terrible violence, which was instigated by the state, and it accepted responsibility when it was gloating about it years later. And what did South Africa do? President Mbeki came to Harare and declared that there was no crisis in Zimbabwe. So if the South African government comes to Harare through its president and declares that there is no crisis in Zimbabwe, when hands are being hacked, people are being killed, an election has been stolen, then it becomes accountable to what's happening. It becomes responsible for the actions that are therefore taken by Zimbabweans when they cross into South Africa looking for jobs. Because by underwriting the theft of elections in Zimbabwe, what South Africa is doing is making a serious problem much worse than it could have been. And because of that, you can't blame Zimbabweans when they try and look for relief to feed their own families. There is no public healthcare system that's working in Zimbabwe. Right now, today, nurses at Harare Hospital, the biggest hospital in Zimbabwe, is down tools because the matron, one of their matrons, has died from COVID. They do not have personal protective equipment, and all those problems make Zimbabweans want to leave, because you look at the situation at Harare Hospital and you say, if I fall sick, I will die. So let me go to South Africa where I can get health care. So our political elites, both in Zimbabwe and in South Africa, must realize that they are the authors of these problems, and they have to resolve the fundamental issues which are political and manifesting themselves through economics, and not to try and send choppers to Limpopo hoping that it will solve the problem.
Let me call up another one of the quotations from your article there, Hopewell, as a last thread that I want to pull at from this conversation. And there you talk about, you're drawing comparisons between what John Foster was able to do. You say Ramaphosa knows the solution, but he doesn't have the backbone to implement it. The solution is political. It requires your government, South Africans, to tell Mnangagwa the truth. John Foster, your apartheid prime minister, had mettle. He told Ian Smith the truth, and the same problem was resolved. What does Ramaphosa telling Mnangagwa the truth look like, and what actions does that come with? Because when you draw parallels with John Foster and Ian Smith, this brings to mind issues such as withdrawal of military support at the time of John Foster and Ian Smith, and economic support being withdrawn, also motivated by Foster's own motivations. What levers does Ramaphosa and the ANC and the government here have that they could pull at that would amount to telling Mnangagwa the truth at the moment?
For instance, they would start by asking the Zimbabwean government to follow its constitution. The problem in Zimbabwe, when we talk about political reforms, we are not talking about anything that is unique to Zimbabwe. We are simply saying follow the constitution. We have a constitutional crisis in Zimbabwe where the rule of law is not followed. So, for instance, Zimbabwe, for it to thrive, the looting and stealing of public funds must stop. The plundering of the nation's natural resources must stop. The reason why investors don't come to Zimbabwe, and your ambassador, the outgoing South African ambassador Mbete, told the President Emerson Mnangagwa this at a seminar some months ago, that the problem that we face in Zimbabwe is that investors are not coming to invest because nobody wants to invest in a country where there is no rule of law. So when the opposition in Zimbabwe takes these issues to SADC, South Africa should not support Zimbabwe's position. It has been supporting Zimbabwe's position. It should only say to Zimbabwe, please follow your constitution, because these countries in SADC are bound by statutes which require them to do certain things. Sovereignty doesn't mean that you abuse your citizens. The reason why we have SADC today is because it's a community of countries with common interests and common values. And those common values must be adhered to. And one of the things that makes South Africa an attractive place for a lot of people within the region is because your government respects the rule of law, your government respects the constitution, investors come and invest in South Africa, and your your economy is robust even under the COVID conditions. But in Zimbabwe, we actually do not have paracetamol in hospitals. You cannot get any basic treatment done without paying money. Today, for you to get the hospital bed in Zimbabwe, you must have at least $3,000, which is over 50,000 rands. That's how bad the situation is. And that is what leads to Zimbabweans going to South Africa. So all the South African government needs to do is to ask their counterparts to respect the rule of law. A couple of months ago, President Mugabe was mocking, President Mnangagwa was mocking the opposition in Zimbabwe, saying that I talk to Cyril Ramaphosa every day. He was actually laughing at all these people who are talking about a crisis in Zimbabwe. If it's true what President Mnangagwa said, then it's an indictment on President Ramaphosa if he doesn't think that there's a crisis in Zimbabwe. But unfortunately, that crisis is unfolding on his doorstep, and it will continue to unfold on the South African doorstep until the issues are resolved.
All right, Hopewell Chin'ono, thank you so much for sharing your insights there and just, weighing in on these issues. Of course, Hopewell Chin'ono being someone who's been dealing with a lot in the past year or so, particularly following his arrest and, detention and all the processes that unfolded in the wake of that in Zimbabwe, weighing in on what South Africa can do to assist the situation in Zimbabwe.